It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at PenFed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payers' funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
It was tough because, you record on Wednesday and then, well, if you're a weekend warrior, right, your prep to go to town on a Friday night is Thursday night. So it's hard to get it all edited and then ready to go by Friday morning before you try to get out of town Friday afternoon or evening. So the Tuesday just bought us one extra day, and we've streamlined the editing down a lot more and getting better at that. And it's really mainly Daniel does a lot of that stuff for us, but it's been a challenge to get everything and stay consistent,
Yeah. So Brandon Fifield is meeting with me from the Alaska Wild Project studio. So actually I got something for you here, which is the good way to start my podcast. Can you hear this? Did that come through? Did that come through all right?
Yeah, let me see if you can hear this one.
Ah, perfect. There's one place here in Ketchikan that sells the double shovel, and so I thought,
nice.
Hey man, if I'm talking to one of the guys, I gotta do this authentic, and that's that much more appropriate that you're at the studios. That's great.
yeah, get some caribou calls, get this thing started, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we got on the air here, we were talking about scheduling. And you guys had previously recorded on Wednesdays, but now you guys record on Tuesdays. Can you kind of go back over a little bit about what the plan was as far as recording and then releasing later versus time and editing and all that? Yeah.
I mean, our original plan was to be able to record basically 2 weeks in advance. So always be 2 weeks ahead. Well, that worked out for a while. Then we got busy in the summer, and then it got to the point where we were only able to do the recording that week to release the next week, which was record on Wednesday, edit through the week, have it ready to release the following Monday, Sunday night, Monday. Well, summer came along, got super busy. That editing time was too cramped to try to record, work, edit, and then get ready for a weekend trip, a weekend warrior trip. It's just way too much. It got to the point where it was actually kind of stressful. And the main reason why we did this whole project was to have fun, and stress is not fun. So we bought ourselves an extra day and started recording on Tuesdays to give us that extra day of the week to do the editing so that we could release it. So we're basically on record on a Tuesday. We've got 5 days to edit, and then have it ready for release that Monday. And we've been pretty consistent with that and been able to stick by it. And we even did some pre-recordings where we did multiple podcasts, or we did some pre-recorded ones so that we released them while we were out on hunting trips and stuff. And Daniel was really cool about getting those together for us and having those ready so that, we would have a release of something new every single week, which is our goal. We want to have something new recorded, whether it's recorded the week there or prior or something, you know what I mean? We want to be consistent, and we feel like that's one of our main goals is outside of having fun with this, is to make sure we're consistent and giving the listeners something every week.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing. It doesn't seem like it would be, but it's just once a week. All you got to do is talk once a week. But man, you do some searches through podcasts, and some people haven't put out podcasts since 2019 or 2020, and you're just like, man.
Yep.
And
it kind of lost steam.
Yeah. Once you're on this side, you understand that, hey man, I'm not going to criticize that at all because stuff happens, and it's hard to. Sometimes you feel like you're ahead of the game, and I had a couple that were planned out. At one point, I was 2 weeks ahead, even when I was doing 2 per week. I just had it, and I had the next 2 weeks planned, and I had them all ready to go. But then all of a sudden, you don't book new people, or you talk to people, and then there's inevitable delays. Like sometimes it takes months to track down someone, and then all of a sudden you're like, dude, I need one for tomorrow. And it's, but, it's kind of good that you like that you're producing something, and it's kind of a good stress to a point, because this is what happens. In order you have to get, a little bit of, you're pushed, you're not quite comfortable, you're doing stuff, and you got to move in order to make it happen. And, and you push through that, and you feel good, and you feel better on the back end.
I agree. Yeah. You gotta push and keep up the hard work and keep yourself relevant, keep your head above water. It is challenging. You're right. Like I thought before we started this, that this was just like, once a week we get together, have a conversation. Well, we threw a camera in there. That is a huge download, and it creates a whole nother, challenge for editing. And to your point though, kind of like have that brief, stressful kind of like time crunch, and then it all gets done. You go on about your business. It releases. It sounds great. You get all this feedback, and you're like, oh man, it's all worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
100%. So I don't know if it was episode 30 or 31 that you were talking about your moose hunt, and to give the listeners, I want to give, the listeners a takeaway. And so I want to give them the specific location. It was in Moose Valley, which is between Anchorage and Prudhoe Bay. Did I get the coordinates right? Yes.
Yeah. That narrow little stretch there, south to north there. Yeah. Right there in Moose Creek.
Yeah.
Take a left at that Y there off that one trail by the river in the woods. And there it is, man. Their bulls are everywhere.
Impossible to miss, right?
And pretty much. Yeah. I'm trying to remember, what episode was that? That was episode, I want to say maybe 30. I think it might've been 30. I'll have to go back and look, but yeah. So, basically you want to just kind of do a little recap on that then, Jeff?
Well, I want to direct people to that episode so they can listen to the full recap there.
Okay.
But I do want to talk about, there were two things. One, I want to talk about the fact that you were charged by the moose because it wasn't dead.
That was crazy.
Maybe we'll start with that one. Yeah, just go with that. So you make a good shot on the moose, and then as you're approaching, it's still got a little something left for you.
Yeah, and it's funny that we probably are over exaggerating it a little in terms of it charging. It actually, thankfully, the first shot I made on it injured it such that it couldn't actually charge. However, I'm pretty sure had it, not been injured it the way that it was, I probably wouldn't be here today, or might be still in the hospital. I'm not really sure, but So let me see. That was episode 30, correct? Episode 30 was A Decade Deep was the name of that podcast. Quick backstory on A Decade Deep name for that podcast is basically this is a moose camp that my partners and I have been hunting for 10 years, so a decade, right? We actually missed 1 year from a childbirth, so we had to take a season off, but it's been 10 years basically since we first went into the area, and had a tremendous amount of success. It takes a long time to figure out an area to build up a moose camp, to figure out what you need and don't need, and supplies and quantities of things. And, a decade later, I feel like we're really, really, really settled in there, and hence the Decade Deep. It's been a long road, but we have gotten to a point where 10 years later, we've got a pretty awesome setup when it comes to a moose camp. So circling back to the whole moose thing. So basically, had a really cool experience with that kill. Every time you take an animal, it's kind of got a unique, I think, set of circumstances, or maybe just something was different from the last time when it happens. And that seems to go every time I've ever taken a deer, a moose, a bear. It's always been like something different or wild, a different kind of, happened or changed. This one was a over 2 hour process to basically see this bull come in, calling him. He's coming in slow and raking and trashing brush and grunting, and finally gets within about a 500-yard clip, goes down a ravine, pops up, and presents a shot to me for a minute, but then lays down. And he lays down for like almost an hour. So I'm sitting there, in a shooting position on my knee with a pair of trekking poles crossed because we forgot freaking shooting sticks. And so I sat there, my hamstring got tight. I got a cramp. I ended up finally moving because the moose couldn't see me. He was just laying in the brush at about 280 yards across a little creek bed. And he was laying there, but his antlers were sticking out. So you could still see exactly where he was, and he could not see me. And he was clearly taking his sweet-ass time because he could have come in to the calls, but he decided to lay down. And I think basically he was resting up and kind of gathering himself before he came over to fight. I think that's what he was actually just recharging his batteries and getting himself rested to come over and exert energy and fight another moose. And so, about, I don't know, an hour and 45 minutes passes by the time I first see him till he finally gets close. Finally, he stands back up. He stands up and then walks behind a set of trees. Well, now I don't got a shot. Well, all this time, rewinding back about 3 days earlier in the hunt, I missed an opportunity on a legal moose where I just couldn't get a good steady shot. And it was a missed opportunity. It was kind of haunting me. Anytime you've ever missed on an animal or a kill, I'm sure everybody's felt it, where you just, you know that the next opportunity you get, you are not going to lose it. You know what I mean? Like you're just dead set. So this is running through my mind. I don't want to miss another opportunity. I know this is a nice bull. It's a legal bull. It's a beautiful moose. Anyway, so he finally comes out and presents a really great kind of like partially quartered broadside shot, and he's trashing the brush. He's about 280 yards, and I put one in his, I put in behind his shoulder, but I hit him kind of more like right in the scapula. And with that shot, I nicked the lungs. However, the shoulder itself, the bone was shattered. I found that out later, of course. But so I hit him. He kind of jumped out, ran about 20 yards, kind of swayed his head around, kind of doing that like death wobble type thing, and then he plops down. Well, his head's kind of still waving around back and forth, and I'm like, man, is he not totally dead? And this is like a couple minutes go by, and at this point I'm starting to feel really bad. I'm like, damn it, I always want to make a good, clean, quick kill on an animal, and this guy is not dead. So I cut the gap by about 50 yards. He stands back up, and so now he's staring straight at me. Well, I decided I'm going to put one more in him. So I put one right in the center of his chest. Of course, I hate to do that because there's a lot of risk for ruining meat, but obviously want to get this animal down and finish him off. So pulling in him, he takes it, plops back down, lays his head down kind of sideways, basically looking like he's expired. I'm like, all right, cool. So kind of do a quiet celebration from like 80 yards away with my buddy, throwing our hands up like, yeah, I got him, And meanwhile, he now has got his phone on recording with an older iPhone. So the video is kind of crappy, but it's still documented. So I walk up to this moose. I come around the back. I kind of nudge him, no movement. I thought I poked him with my gun barrel, but looking back on the video, I actually just kind of like kicked him or kind of nudged him with my foot. So I walk around. Now his head's laying to my left and his butt's to my right. So he's like lengthwise. And then I nudge him again. Now I walk around the front. Now, meanwhile, at this time, I'm coming around the front of him. I'm now convinced he's dead. So I go ahead and take that round out of the chamber and put my safety on. Big mistake. I come around the corner. The bull's eyes open right up. And I'll never forget this. I swear I'll never forget this. The white in that moose's eyes, I saw were the size of like a small saucer plate. And his eyes were so big. His one eye, his right eye was so big, he sprung up. And I almost kind of froze. I'm like, holy shit, like this caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared. Of course, it was a brief, second, maybe two, that I quickly realized like this is a possible dangerous situation. He steps on that injured shoulder and puts his head down like he's going to come at me. And basically he couldn't put the weight on that shoulder, right? Mm-hmm. He just kind of like stepped on it and then realized like he had nothing. So his head kind of waved down and he realized he he couldn't get me. Well, I thought he was coming at me at that point, so I started backing up. Well, I'm backing up in time. I'm, put one back in, chamber around, to realize that my scope is powered all the way to 10.
Oh yeah.
2.5 to 10, right? I had it fully powered. So I'm like, shit, if I put my scope on this guy, I'm not going to see him at all. He's only 20 yards away. So I had enough time to kind of dial it back in. Well, then I'm getting ready to draw the gun. What do? I trip over a fucking tussock behind me, where now I fall backwards. So I got the gun in my hand. I fall back. I spring myself back up with my left hand. Luckily, it's kind of like that squishy waterbed, tundra-y type stuff. So I sprung myself back up, was able to get in position, and then I put one behind his ear and severed his spine. It kind of killed him on impact. And another really cool thing that I'll never forget is when his body dropped to the ground, he like collapsed like a ton of bricks, and it shook the ground beneath me. And it was just like so intense, man. So not quite as cool of a story as if he charged me and then I shot him. I know that would probably be a little bit more riveting. However, it was a very exciting and like, I don't know, I almost pretty much had to change my underwear after it, if that explains anything. So it was quite the experience.
I go back and forth on crazy experiences, because if you have crazy experiences like that, that means that maybe you're doing something wrong, or maybe you're prone, and maybe at some point, like, you're going to get got,
Yeah.
But at the same
Totally,
time,
man.
if everything just goes perfectly as planned, it's not excited, but man, that's kind of a nice thing. Like, I don't want to have, like, and with certain things like survival stories, I don't want to have any of those.
Right.
I don't want to talk about the time, oh yeah, I've been out there and, and this happened. Like, I don't want to have that story ever, because it's like dangerous enough or sketchy enough as it is. In my adventure lit class a couple of years ago, we were just talking about, basic times when things became a little bit hairy. And one of the kids, he could have been totally lying, but he said that they were getting flown into a lake, and on the first pass, because their buddy owned the float plane, they pushed out their packs near the ridge. That way they wouldn't have to hike all the way from the lake to the ridge where they were going to camp with their packs.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh, I know exactly where this is going. Like, you don't even have to say the rest. I know that's a bad idea. Like, it would be nice.
It can never be good.
No, like, so they ended up landing, and then they got fogged in. Of course they got fogged in. And the plane like had dropped them off and then took off, and then they got fogged in, couldn't find the packs. And so they ended up having to sleep with, they only had whatever they had like with them, like all the big camp stuff was up there. And then I thought that's so avoidable. So unbelievably avoidable. Like, you can't tempt it, because things are going to happen that are going to be crazy as they are. Like with your story there, it wasn't like you were testing things because you wanted a better story. Sometimes things work out like that. And it's enough of a roll of a dice just to get out there and try to make these things happen.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I don't ever want to tell the story of like, oh yeah, I almost died, and this is what I did to survive. Because you have one or two of those, your wife ain't gonna let you go out no more. So you don't want to even get yourself into that position. And yeah, it's like we have had a few of those moose hunts that just went flawless, and those were really nice. However, I feel like those ones are harder to remember, because they just kind of went to schedule and they were like routine. And then there's the ones that had, well, this trip, this broke, and then we had this weather on this trip, and we helped these guys out because they had a situation, and it was like those ones you kind of remember. So I feel like this one, I kind of was looking back and reflecting on the whole 10-year experience and the things we've been through, good and bad, through this decade, adventure. This one's going to stand out for a while, because I've never had a wild animal after I shot it get up, or I guess I've walked up to him and had him still kind of, with nerves or still moving, or still like a last breath or two, but they're pretty much done. This one was absolutely still alive, and it also was a humbling reminder I had just practiced shooting just the week before I went out, Jeff. I felt so good about the groups I was shooting, and I was trying some new ammo, and it worked really well and shot better than I ever had before with this rifle that I've shot tons of animals with, and I tried some new ammo and it went better than I expected. So as you can imagine, going a field with the confidence in your shooting and then shooting something and it not going right reminds you just how human you are and all the variables and room for error in the process of taking an animal, even with a rifle. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like with a bow or something more challenging. But I was like, wow, I guess I better get back in the range and start working a little bit more, because I felt pretty good about the shot I was going to make, and it clearly wasn't good enough. And I guess I'm okay with it, though. I'm good. It reminds me that I need to work on that, and I have room for improvement. And not every time is going to be the perfect kill and perfect shot the way you plan it.
Yeah.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
A buddy of mine was up on a goat hunt down here with one of his friends, and his friend shot a pretty small goat. Wasn't anything to really write home about, but it absorbed the first shot from a 300 Win Mag.
Wow.
Just like perfect shot. And then it kind of ran off a little bit, shot it again, perfect shot. It took 3 shots. And this isn't even a big mountain goat, so it's not even like he did a bad job or is irresponsible. Sometimes these animals, for whatever reason, maybe it's adrenaline, maybe it's whatever, they just absolutely absorb, and it becomes Western, just that specific animal. And other times, you shoot it and it drops and it's not even a perfect shot, but for some reason it shocks it, whatever. And then archery, same thing. You see some people hit it in the right spot. It just, for some reason, doesn't go very far and it goes down. And it's definitely a confidence shaker though, when you feel like you made a good shot and then it just doesn't happen the way you want to. But I mean, you might make that exact same shot on the next moose and it's not a big deal. It's kind of a tough one.
It is. And I've heard a lot about goats, and I'm actually, that's one animal up here I have yet to have the privilege to take is a mountain goat, although I want one very, very badly. But I've heard multiple times on goats are one of the toughest animals. That it's not uncommon for a guy to hunt a goat with a 375 or a 338 just for the reason that you just said. They're tough. They just absorb that shot. I mean, they're thick boned. They're stout. They're built very tough. They've got thick hide. Plus, I mean, just look where they live. Yeah. I mean, just that lifestyle that they live is, and I mean, it's one of the toughest animals on the earth, if you ask me.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a question about the processing of a moose, because I've never been on a hunt in which we had to like hang some of the meat, go back to camp, and then come back the next day. Everything that like the the bears, the deer. I mean, obviously a black-tailed deer is a pretty easy pack out. You can do that, no sweat. And then even if we brought a deer back to camp, we would just pack it in some snow that was, a little bit further away from camp, or, not even too far away, because we're dealing with black bears that, you could almost have it in camp. Like you have your food in camp with black bears around, because typically, overwhelmingly, I would say black bears aren't going to come into camp to, mess with your food or mess with your deer. Brown bears will, grizzly bears will, but we don't have them on Prince of Wales Island, at least, and then parts of Ketchikan. So were you able to get that moose out all in one shot?
Yeah, okay. we were. Go ahead.
Have you been on hunts where you didn't? And so how do you reapproach that, knowing that you've hung the meat, but is there a chance that, like, you process the meat, you take it from the carcass, and then hang it, and then as you approach, like, are you you're paying attention to wind? Do you have game bags that have reflective lettering on it? Like, how do you? And are you just totally on edge, thinking, all right, let's go get the rest of the meat, or we're gonna pack stuff out and there could be something there? Like, how does that go?
Yeah, we've had through the decade in that area, and the different the different logistical challenges we've had on getting to our camp, and in between, even out to where the trail starts, we've had to deal with the meat in several different ways. Lately, it has been really, really easy. First and foremost, knock on wood, we haven't seen a lot of bears in the area. Very little sign. I'm not really sure why that is, but it is not an area that is very thick with bears, so we're pretty lucky there. So, second is that in the last 6 years, we have graduated to Argos, and we have been fortunate enough to, we've been fortunate enough to shoot the moose from a glassing knob, which is about a 7-minute walk from base camp, into an elevated location on a knob. We've literally been able to shoot the animals from that knob, about 360 degrees, different angles we've shot, and then being able to just take the two Argos straight to the animal, break it down. Now with the moose, you have to take out everything, including bones. Okay, so you have to take front, rear, legs, bone, meat on the bone, ribs, meat on the bone, neck, you can carve off. Basically, you're going to leave the moose, which is going to be a gut pile, a long strip of spine, and the hide. That's pretty much all you're leaving behind. Mm-hmm. Everything else has to get packed out. So you can successfully load an entire moose if you want in an Argo, and an empty Argo. In this case, we've got 2 of them, so we'll kind of put a few pieces in each, and then we can run them right down to camp. We've actually got a meat hanging pole. If you look on my Instagram page, you can actually see I posted a deal on just kind of post-kill meat care, and which included, anything you can basically do given your circumstances of field to get your meat cool as fast as possible and keep it dry. Mm-hmm. So those are the 2 most important aspects of meat care after the kill. So we're able to get the moose to our camp, where we have a meat pole where we've actually been able to pack 3 moose total, all broke down, of course, in the various meat pole kind of configurations that we have. We are able to easily pack an entire moose out in one trip between the 2 Argos and 2 meat wagons. In the past, we have had a situation where we got 3 moose in the one area, and we were able to get all 3 moose out with 2 Argos and 2 meat wagons, but we were grossly overloaded. And kind of wrap up real quick to answer your question. We have also killed a moose in another area where we actually hung it and left it to come back to it 5 days later. We specifically chose an area in the shade, hung a nice pole, draped it with tarps. We noticed the wind was coming from the same direction every day, so it was kind of like funneling into where the meat was hanging. So it was like the most perfect meat hanging situation for like 5 days. Came back to it, peppered the crap out of it with the game bags. It's kind of an old thing my dad taught me. get a big thing of Costco pepper and just pepper the crap out of the game bags. That'll keep anything, flies and everything off of it. Seems to work. Never had an animal get into the meat bags, game bags that way. And we've also had to, when we've had equipment breakdowns where now we couldn't take the amount of moose out, where we had to do multiple trips, we've actually gone all the way out to the trailhead, built a pole, hung the meat, took 2 moose out, hung them, came all the way back into base camp, packed up, took the last moose all the way out, and then, we basically, that moose was off-site and away from us for, say, like 48 hours. And luckily, again, placed in a good spot, cool, dry, tarped it. Tarp meaning poles hanging, meat, poles hung, meat is hung, and then the tarps are just draped over, not actually like wrapped around it, watertight, just draped over where air can still circulate through, and yet have never had a moose spoil or meat go bad or anything like that in doing that process. So we've been pretty lucky in that regard.
Well, the overnight lows are even, September, they start to get in the 30s, right? So you're talking about darn near your freezing temperatures.
Yeah.
And then your daytime
ideal.
highs aren't very high either. So when people talk about like that rear quarter on a thick piece of meat, like you're getting so much heat that's still trapped in there around the femur. And so unless you cut the bone out or cut vents or something like that, there's going to be a lot of heat in there. But if the temperature goes from, it doesn't get above 51 degrees and it's dropping down into the 30s, like you're going to lose a lot of heat really, really quick. And so if you haven't had spoilage, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of different weather. We've had hot, we've had really, really cold. This year was really, really chilly. It was, like you said, mid 30s, upper 30s, lower 40s at night. Maybe it got into the lower 50s during the day. So, and my moose actually got to hang for 3 total days at moose camp. So it couldn't have been any better as far as when we took the moose, we're able to hang it. It happened to be the coolest night we were there, was the first night it was hung. So it kind of got that initial, like, quick, efficient cool down. And when we brought the meat home, I then hung it in my backyard under a canopy. I have a cool setup. I actually posted that on Instagram too. I've got 2 6-foot Warner ladders with a 4x4, and then I use ratchet straps to hang all my meat. It's a pretty nifty setup, really, really easy. And I use a wheelbarrow so I can actually like hang the meat myself. I can bring the meat down by myself. I got it set up so I don't have to call a buddy every time to come over and help me hang it. Although my wife helped me hang this one and she wasn't really too excited about it. But my point was that when we went to go and start processing and carving the moose meat up, your hands got cold inside that meat. You know what I mean? Once we got down to that bone, to that femur and the scapula, you literally could pull your hand up and look at the steam coming off your hands because the meat was so cold. So it was a primo cool down on that meat. Probably one of the better ones that I've seen. And I actually paid a lot more attention this round because, I'm trying to see how each season changes with the meat, how it looks, how it cases. And definitely the cooler, the better, man, because we had cool weather, and this was a perfect cure up on this moose for sure.
Nice. A couple of years ago, I shot a nice buck in rut, skinned it, hung it, and then it was at a buddy's place, and I put it in his barn, and it just got super, super cold, and it froze. And I was like, oh, man, is that going to be bad? He said, no, man, this is perfect. You look at those meat lockers and that aged meat and stuff. And so he said, give it a couple more days. It's going to warm up a little bit. And so I went back, and you think about meat and then it's frozen, then it's thawed, and how it degrades so much if you're talking about store-bought beef. But as far as hanging something, man, when I went back there to cut it, it was just like this perfect clay. And your hands did get cold, but it was so easy to cut. It wasn't slippery, wasn't slick, man. It was just so great. And then, of course, when you're grinding that stuff, and that's the trick that everybody knows, that if you have the grinder cold and you have the meat cold, it's going to grind so much better. And it's awesome.
Yeah, you nailed it, man. It's you lose a little bit of meat, but it also allows it to bleed out and cure up. And I mean, when we butchered up that moose, there was like almost no blood. It wasn't like a crime scene, when you're. We've done that before with the Sitka blacktail. We'll go get in the sound. We don't really hang those and season them. I mean, we pretty much go and take them, get them home, skin them out, butcher them up, and then they go straight to the processor. I mean, it's within a day or two at the most.
Yeah.
So a different scenario with the moose.
Yeah, that's. Are you? Well, actually, by the way, did you get? You were down at the Sound last weekend, right?
No, I have not been out yet. No, I'm on my way out. Not this weekend, but next weekend. We've got a hunt scheduled.
Nice. Are you of the camp that, because people talk about rutty everything, right? Oh, but it's a rut, so you got to grind the whole thing, and people talk about the same thing with mule deer. And Abby's shot 2 now. I've shot,
okay.
No, she shot 3, I think, and I shot 1. But, anyway, but people talk about, it's a mule deer, it doesn't taste nearly as good, or, it's a ruddy mule deer, it doesn't taste good, it's a ruddy blacktail, it's a ruddy whatever, and so they almost discard. Or I really haven't had a really ruddy deer.
Okay, so you haven't really experienced it?
Yeah, I've had one that maybe didn't taste maybe as good, but I think some people, it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. You get that nice alpine deer, and you hiked a lot, and it was it tastes so good because you put so much work in, and then you're like, oh well, this deer is not going to taste as good because it is October. Well, are you like spoiling it for the taste? Are you not really being objective? Do you notice a real big difference? Have you had ruddy stuff, or is it like, it's not that bad?
Yeah, I have had 2 experiences. One just definitive, no questions, absolutely rutted out. Didn't get to eat an ounce of meat. I took a caribou on like September 30th in 2016, and a friend of mine, they extended the 485 caribou tag that year. They didn't hit quota, so they extended it. So they was coming from a moose hunt, went out for a day trip with my buddy Josh Boots, and we got on, I don't know, we must have saw like 4,000 caribou that day. I mean, there were herds just rolling through this valley to the point where we were just able to wait and pick the biggest bull we could find. And we both ended up shooting a herd bull, respectively, with their groups. And when I cracked that meat open, first off, I could tell it didn't smell right. It smelled sweet, and something was weird when we were cleaning it. I ended up taking out the Indian Valley and asked the folks there to, inspect it, smell it. And the second they stuck their nose in the tub, they knew right away that it was a fully rutted caribou. They said, now, if you really want to know, you go home and you throw a piece in a cast iron pan, and if it smells sweet, you got rutted caribou meat. So I went home, threw a steak on the grill, or threw a steak on a cast iron over some butter, salt, pepper, super simple. And sure enough, I took a bite and almost threw up because
really?
I was anticipating that it was going to taste like what they said, and it tastes worse than what I thought. and I did the research to find out that, and I guess maybe this is inaccurate or maybe I read it wrong, but this is what I took, was that the caribou are drinking so much of the water with female urine in it that their liver can only process so much toxins. So now their liver's overloaded trying to process and detox itself. Now it's trying to detox the extra toxins that it's taking in. Now it's just seeping out into the bloodstream, hence rutted meat. All right. So what I read, look into this, Jeff. You're an educated man. I'm sure you could find some good information on it.
No, I'm just going to quote you. I don't have to do the research.
Yeah.
It's all about what you've heard, right? Why verify facts?
Exactly. Yeah. Don't go to the internet. No. I did go though. I went to the internet, and that's what I read was the 2 worst tasting rutted animals were mule deer and caribou, from what I could find. And so I then rewinded back to I took a moose out of that area. Oh man, I want to say it was like 8 years ago, and I remember taking this moose, and right away something was amiss. So first off, he had like an infection on his leg, and he had like a boil on his shoulder. So he was like kind of had some like weird, like maybe some like fighting wounds that got infected that, you know, were messed up. He had gangrene infection on his head because he had just gotten in a fight. Yeah, he just gotten in a fight, so his head was all cut up on the top. And this bull, I shit you not, he had gray hair on his nose. So I'm like, man, I wish I would have figured out how to age that moose, because he wasn't huge. He was only like 52, with tons of points, nice moose. But man, he just seemed like an old moose. The way he like looked and was gray, and he had the injuries. And then when you walked up to him, he just stunk to high heaven, stunk terribly. And well, what he was doing those wallows, right, where they pee in the they kind of dig up the dirt, they pee and then they roll in it. Right? Okay. So that's what they do when they're in rut, to kind of get things fired up and get their scent out there. And so he just had the mix of like all the attributes of a rutted moose. And I would say that I chewed on that moose for 2 years. It was not the best tasting. The burger was kind of just not that delicious, clean, rich moose flavor.
Yeah.
And everything else I had made, the steaks and roasts that I kept, I ended up thawing out a year later and just getting them turned into cheese dogs, because it was like, man, this thing just did not taste very good. And I would say that those are my two experiences with rut, that I did eat game meat that was like clearly not good.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing about having summer sausage recipes or having all those mixes and stuff. Like you can bury a lot of that meat. And so rather than have to use like some prime cuts that you're going to end up turning into unbelievable summer sausage, like, you know, turn some of the meat that might be a little bit not great into some of that. And you can smell that same sort of thing with bears. If you're shooting a black bear down here and it's been on the rivers, you know it's just going to taste terrible and smell terrible.
Yep.
And you can look like later on in the season when they're just like lapping up like the rotting fish that are on the side of the river, and they have this like just these diarrhea stains all down the back of their legs. Like that thing is going to taste absolutely gross. I don't even know how, like, I don't even want to think about it. Like if I have a bad weekend of, you know, whatever, like there's some things that are going on, and I can't imagine how that feels for a bear, but you know, I guess they're used to it. They have no comparison. They don't have wet wipes or whatever, but I mean, you just know that thing is going to taste terrible, which is why they're not required to take the meat.
Right.
So that's one thing. But when I was up in March in Fairbanks for that 40-mile quota herd hunt, and I was thinking that by the time that March rolled around, and these things haven't eaten much because there's not a whole lot to eat. Like they're up higher on these peaks because that's the only thing that's windswept enough to reveal the lichen that they can eat. I figured the meat was just going to be jerky and it was going to taste terrible. But you know, and they were okay with shooting cows. If anything, if you're going to cull the herd, the best way to kind of cull the herd is to shoot the cows. And so,
definitely
shot a cow and brought it home. And I was thinking, okay, this is just going to be like a pepperoni cow. It was an unbelievable experience. It was, you know, my first -30 hunt and snow machine, and did the whole thing, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But man, it was so good. And the backstrap, I thought I'd overcooked it. I was at a buddy's cabin, and it was, you know, it was dark at the cabin, and I flipped it, and I was like, man, you just kind of do the poke test, and it's so just like sloppy. It felt like it was just too tender, like it wasn't cooked. I'm like, man, this thing isn't cooked yet, but it has to be cooked. It's been so long on here. But it was just unbelievably tender, and it tasted so good. I'd almost end up cooking it all the way through. Like it was still a little pink in the middle, but it was so tender and so delicious. And I thought, man, that's a lot different than I thought. But it was a cow, and that was probably one of the main reasons, because you don't have a lot of the same metabolic changes, maybe.
They always taste better.
And so, you know, that obviously doesn't apply to bull caribou, but man, I definitely got to get up there for a bull caribou.
For sure.
It's got to.
Do you put in for the like the Unit 13 permits for it? Are you putting in for tags?
Let's see. What did I put in for? The 13. Those mountains that are just north of Wasilla Palmer, Matsu area.
Yeah, that's
I,
an Elchina unit, pretty much.
Yeah, I put in for that 1 year, but part of it's like you don't know what to put in for, like if it's worth it. I was talking with someone on a podcast about maybe I was texting Jack or something like that about there's that mountain goat or no Dall sheep tag in like the backyard of Anchorage, and I thought, well, I mean, is it even worth it?
Yeah.
And it's like that is the one to put in for. And you hopefully draw, but like you're not going to because everyone it's so coveted. And I thought, because some of those tags, like this looks like an awesome one. It looks like it's pretty nice and easy and accessible. But I mean, there might not be any Dall sheep there, so like you put in there and you draw it, and like, oh, cool. There's, the biggest Dall sheep is going to be like a quarter curl. Like, good luck with that. Like you drew this tag, but there's nothing you can do with it. So it's hard to tell which ones are worth it and not. There's so many different tags, different areas, and down here it's just pretty straightforward. You get your deer, you get your bear, and you don't draw the mountain goat, so you try to do it over the counter.
Yeah. No, I mean you guys are limited, and I put in for. There's 2 caribou tags that I put in for. So if you're ever interested, and obviously the draw period's about to start here in November. Hit me up, man. We can go through the supplement. I've poured endless hours over that thing, and I've got a pretty good dialed in process for the tags that I put in for, and the caribou I put in for are nothing special. I mean, it's just the main unit 13 DC 485, which gives you really good access to good caribou hunting, whether it be non-motorized, motorized, boat, airplane. I mean, you can get in there any which way and have a really, really great opportunity at a caribou. And for a guy like you, who's in Southeast, that could, draw this tag, assumably, and then be able to put a trip together and get up here and kind of see some of this stuff, it'd be a pretty cool experience for you, I think.
Yeah. And the nice thing too is that if you don't draw anything, there's still over-the-counter possibilities. Like there's always. Everybody
definitely.
is talking about the haul road, and that would be a lot of fun. But it would only be fun if it wasn't chaotic. I hear just nightmare stories about that 40-mile herd when it opens up. And you have everybody up there, shooting everything from high caliber good rifles to just putting holes in them with ARs, and people shooting caribou that have already been shot 3 or 4 times, and it's an unattractive hunt.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely not. No,
for sure. But
you can find some good. I mean, there is some good hunting up there too. You just kind of know where to go. And I've never done that haul road caribou hunt, to be honest. In fact, caribou isn't something I actually chase unless I have a tag. And the last time I took caribou was when I had a tag. My daughter had a tag a couple of years ago. We went and got one. But I don't make it a thing like a lot of guys do, where annually, like, I go get my caribou. Like they do it like deer. And I guess if I wasn't so passionate and dedicated to sheep and moose hunting, I guess I probably would do that too. But I feel like, unfortunately, I can only do so much with my time, and caribou kind of gets the back burner a little bit. However, I'd love to go up and, go off the haul road with a bow and take a caribou one day. Just do it. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. If nothing else, it seems like it'd be an awesome, just great experience. Early August, when the weather is going to be, pretty much as good as it's going to be up there, and just have a great experience. But so to bring it, like the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about was kind of about that.
Yeah.
It might end up being kind of a good closer here, was that you mentioned that it was year 10, and that old timer that was there, he was on year 50. And there's just like, you put your time into certain things, like you choose aspects of your life and think, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life, either whether it be career or whether it be what you hunt or where you live or whatever. And it's fun to find something that you think, man, yes, I want to do this now, and I'm going to want to do it later too. Like so many people go through things that, they change their hobby, or they used to like to do it, but now they don't like it anymore. But certain things, like it seems like a moose camp would be Yeah, forever, indefinitely, without question. Hopefully, 50 years from now, still doing it. Well, that'd be pretty old, but yeah, hopefully. Right?
Yeah.
40,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, it was just cool because we've in our journey to find a moose camp, right? It was like something that we started years ago where we were like, man, we just love to find a spot. Well, through trial and error and areas that I'd hunted growing up, which were really cool spots, but have blown up since then. Like a lot of people hunt them, and so I went in there and was like, yeah, this ain't it, and this ain't it. So we kind of hit and missed for a couple of years there, and then finally came across this place. Well, what we found were several other groups in that area that hunted that had been in there for stretches of 20, 30 plus years. And a lot of these guys were combative and not really interested in our arrival into the area. But, we basically offered anything that they needed in terms of fuel and tools or anything to just let them know, hey, this is it's Alaska. No one owns any of this state land. I don't want to have to remind you of that, but I want to let you know that we're here for the same purpose that you are. And if you need anything, we're available. And so over years it kind of simmered down and we got accepted. And there's a really cool, I don't know if legacy is the right word, but that these guys, families or groups of men and women and kids that grow up that kind of create surrounding a moose camp. And that gentleman we met, sweet older gentleman, was there with two other guys, his son and his son's buddy, who are basically doing 95% of the work. He's 70, I think he was 72 or something like that. So, but it was really cool. His demeanor, the way he was just kind of pacing back and forth, waiting for his boy to come back. And he was talking to us calmly. And, we're kind of in this kind of hurry, the way we were processing our logistics, and everybody that's doing their stuff is kind of seems like there's a sense of urgency. But with this old timer, he was just kind of cruising along and just relaxed. And it was I guess after you've done something 50 years, you kind of have a different approach and style about how you go through the process. And when I met him and he told us his story, I thought, man, it was so inspiring. And now I hope that I can only continue this, adventure and growth, dynasty, whatever you want to call it, where we're going to bring our kids up and then they can take it over and do the whole thing. I can only hope it gets to that. We'll see.
Yeah. That's such an important thing, to pay homage to the people who were there before you. And, when, I don't know who it was that came out with that public land owner t-shirt, and I always just kind of it made me a little bit uncomfortable, because it seems like that's kind of representative of the entitled attitude that some people have about, well, I can be here too. And you see it on the fishing banks so much. I can get as close as I want. This isn't your spot. It's almost like an excuse to ignore basic common courtesy and ethics.
Yeah.
And so, appreciating that, hey, we found this spot, but you had it before. So we want to hunt here, but we are going to understand that you were here before, and we're going to do everything we can, offer services, offer whatever. And we would like to be worthy of carrying on and being the new people who have also discovered a good spot and recognize that you've been here first, rather than coming back in and say, well, it's not your land, you don't own it. That sort of attitude, which it separates hunters and divides hunters, but we need to be, congealed on these things so that we can get, find that common ground. So those sort of things just really divide us, and it's too bad.
Yeah. A little more unified. And that's how it became over time. It was kind of one of those things where we had the utmost respect and courtesy for these other groups of men that had kind of set the tone for the area. And, it was great because we were able to communicate on, okay, you're in this area, we're in that area. And then come to find out, we're so far away from each other that we'll never, ever, ever hear each other's gunshots. I mean, it was like, so once we figured that out and then help them realize that, it was like, all right, well, we just see each other. I think it's just that, like, you just want to see people when you go out hunting. But now we've gotten to a point where it's like, okay, you recognize these guys, this group, they're machines. You know, you kind of know who's got what. And then now we've actually gotten to a point where we're first name with a lot of these other guys in groups. And it all works because we communicated. We kind of set our like ground rules as far as like, well, we're going to be over here. We're going to be here from these dates. And then again, you know, I extended out myself to, you know, I have a bunch of tools. I've got fuel. I've got supplies. I've got ropes. I got straps. I've got all this stuff in my boat that I'm like, hey, if you guys need anything, please, this is it. Have at it. Just please put it back. And they took me up on that a couple of times, and I think that builds kind of like a community there a little bit when you start to kind of look out for each other, but never step on each other's toes. So it just kind of works out that way.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to one of the first things we were talking about as far as those experiences. If you make a good name for yourself, if something does happen to happen, like you have people who are also looking out for you. When I was up on that 40-mile hunt, my buddy and I took the snow machines back. Actually, we were going to on our head back to Fairbanks because we hadn't seen any. And on our way back, we saw these guys, and they had a couple caribou, and we pulled over to the side of the road, and I said, hey, it looks like you got some caribou. And he said, you guys have a coffee percolator? And we're just like, we don't, but we have a pot. He's like, all right. The caribou are 3 miles that way. And it was just that I want to make some coffee. I've done the work. So you give me a pot where I can boil some water, make some more coffee. I'll tell you where the caribou are. So we took off, and they stuck around until we came back with the caribou. Like they just wanted to make sure, because it was getting pretty close toward evening, and you know when the temperature drops and things can get pretty crazy. So if two guys set off on snow machines, like you don't spend the night out there. You've got to get back to your truck, and even sleeping in your truck, it's over. If you have to be going back to town, like there's nothing. It's not going to happen when it's below zero. So like those guys who did not know us whatsoever, they stuck around and you know waited for us to come out, and then also after they'd used the pot, put it back in the truck, and that sort of camaraderie, like didn't know, but just that mutual respect was so huge. And it's definitely there, but there are definitely other people who are so desperate about their spot, who are so angry and trying to claim public land, and it's just crazy. It's like, man, we have to work together a little bit. Like you can't, and if you develop that reputation of being a jerk, like people are less out to look or less likely to look out for you, and it's just not a situation you want to be in.
Yeah, I think it always needs to be at the end. Everybody knows that we all have families or loved ones or people that want us to come home and we want to go home to, and that we all look out for that we all remember, no matter what's going on out here, like these are all humans that all need to get home safe. And there needs to be that. And some guys don't believe in that. And whatever, I mean, whatever their issues are, compartmentalizing that whole humanity part of it. But I mean, that's the most important thing is people being safe, getting home safely. And it's really cool, that story, that it still gives you hope, and that there are guys out there, like those guys waited in that parking lot, drink their coffee, but wanted to watch you guys come out to know you got to your truck okay before they left. Yeah. That's huge, man.
Yeah. Well, what do you got for a send-off, man? I got some deer I got to devour for dinner here. What do you got for a send-off?
Nice. Yeah, I actually got sheep meatloaf at home. The wife just sent me a text and said I better get there soon. So perfect timing on the closeout. Got some fresh sheep meatloaf waiting for me. No, I'll just send off with, if you haven't checked us out, I know Jeff has been one of our biggest promoters. Check out Alaska Wild Project podcast. We are releasing every Monday, and we have episode 33 coming out next week. I'll do a little sneak peek on that. We actually go in depth into the art of building a cooking bag kit for the field. Very interesting stuff. Daniel and I busted out our cook kits to include Coleman stoves, cast iron pans, coffee tools, utensils, supplies. Really good tips and tricks for that. So be sure to tune in and listen, and of course get caught up on all our other podcasts. Of course, can check us out on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, check us out. And Jeff, I always want to thank you sincerely every time you have me on. That I know why, I know what kind of guy you are, what you're trying to do, and I love that we're doing this stuff together, man. I appreciate you having me on again.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And if you do talk to Jack, I got him back on here for some recaps. And I'm always texting Daniel. Man. It's been great to meet up with you guys and just like making each other better. You know, you got people like it's not a competition. It's like just improving each other, and it's great to be around people who have similar goals. But I don't want to keep you from your sheep meatloaf, man. That sounds unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, you enjoy yours, man, and we'll talk soon. All right, Jeff.
Take care, buddy.
You too, bro.
Right,
see you later.